Welcome back to the channel, everybody. As promised, I am going to be mixing in some more sci-fi to the channel and not just stick to simply fantasy. So today we will be talking about The Andromeda Strain by Michael Crichton. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to the channel. Content coming every week. After really only reading Red Rising as my fantasy sci-fi blend this year, I wanted to actually step into a little bit more hard sci-fi, so I picked up The Andromeda Strain by Michael Crichton. And this book was very, very interesting and also boring. So the way that Crichton writes, at least in this book, is because he is an incredibly smart person. He was a doctor. He was a scientist. He was just a generally insanely smart guy and also an author. So the Andromeda Strain is marketed as a techno thriller. I didn't know what the hell that meant, but this book is more science forward than actually being a thriller. So the general premise, though, and the reason I was interested in the book to begin with is because, well, A, I hear great things about Crichton, so I wanted to get into some of his works, but B, basically there's a military satellite. This takes place in the 60s, and a satellite crashes to Earth, and it crashes outside of this small town in Arizona, out in the middle of the desert, kind of out in the middle of nowhere. And you're introduced to the story through two characters' eyes who are kind of researching what's going on, because basically the satellite drops and this entire town within seconds is dead, except for two people. So these guys, it very much starts out as a thriller. In the beginning, they're driving kind of like a surveillance van towards this town. And as they get to it, they're seeing bodies everywhere, but they do find a couple of people alive. There's an old man, and there's I believe like a 2-week-old baby or 2-month-old baby. It's a very small child. So they're basically trying to figure out what the hell happened, how all these people instantly died. There's some pretty gruesome descriptions of how some of these people died, and I was very much invested in that part of the story. And overall, I wish that there was a little bit more of that, because Crichton, and I don't know if this is like a trend that he does in a lot of his books, but because he's so smart and scientific and analytical, he spends large amounts of the book actually just explaining science that isn't necessarily directly related to the story itself, and it almost takes away from it in some aspects. So overall, I did like the book a lot, but I wish that he had spent a little bit more time moving the plot forward, as opposed to taking 20 pages to explain. There's a fly in my basement. Rather than taking 20 pages at a time to explain various scientific methods, previous, actual U.S. history, scientific history that's taken place, these different calculations and stuff that happen. Because while all that is very interesting when he does it based on what's actually happening in the story, like he'll break down experiments that are happening, or he'll show equations, things like that. All that is great and super interesting. But he kind of goes off on tangents every once in a while of things that just completely don't matter to the actual story or source material. It'll be like they're explaining a test, and then it'll say, here's everything that led up to that becoming, a scientific method. And it'll just go through like pages and pages of U.S. history scientific methods. And it almost reads like a science report at times, which is cool. But at the same time, you could have spent more of that time and focus on the actual story and making this more of a true thriller. I don't think techno thriller really applies that much here. It's not much of a thriller. Like I said, it reads more like a scientific report, and the actual story parts are fantastic. There's a lot of forward thinking. I mean, this was written in '69, and there is a ton of just very intelligent words and science behind the book and what he's telling here with this Andromeda Strain. The scientists basically going to this secret lab to figure out what this thing is and how they can stop it from spreading. I just wish there was actually more of that and less of the other stuff. So the really cool part, though, is after that kind of very much a thriller intro to the book, you actually follow a bunch of different people being woken up in the middle of the night, kind of called into duty, taken away from their families to go study what's happening. All of that was very interesting. But again, he kind of just loses himself in the science of it all, almost saying like, because this guy is so smart and well written and well read that he just wants to tell all these different things. I just wish that there had been more of an actual story throughout, because it almost takes a backseat at times, and that was sort of disappointing, honestly. Overall, I did really like the book. It was super interesting. I just wish he had spent a little bit more time focused in on the story itself and not all the other scientific stuff that, while interesting, didn't really move the plot forward. This is a pretty short book, so there's not much of a story. Like, it's almost as if, because of how short the text is, he really just should have focused in. And I feel like this is something that I've never seen any of the adaptations of this. I don't know if they're complete garbage or not. This almost reads like something that would be better as a movie, like an hour and a half, 2 hour long movie, where you can really feel that slow burn thriller of introducing the story with the satellite falling from the sky, and this unsuspecting town being caught in the dark and dying from whatever the strain is that happens to spread out throughout the town. Really play and build the characterization of the scientists involved in this a little bit more. Build the suspense of them figuring out what happened, getting to the site, studying the strain. Everything that is the story of this could have been better fleshed out, I think, and honestly better as an adaptation on screen with actors and a script, because, like I said, too often it just pulls you into the science of it all and doesn't actually move what little story there is forward. So while I did enjoy that aspect of it, I kind of wish it was structured a little bit better. There's not a whole lot of characterization of the characters themselves. They are just kind of, they're a scientist, they're put in this position. They all kind of talk the same. There's no real characters to follow here. I know this kind of sounds like I didn't like it, because I do have a lot of critiques of it, but I did overall enjoy it. I just kind of wish it was structured a little bit differently. I think most of the thriller and suspense parts kind of happen up front, a little bit more toward the beginning of the book. There are some things that happen toward the end, as the scientists are trying to discover what's going on with the strand, how they can stop it from spreading, what would happen if, this gets out amongst the world. So, I mean, all that's very interesting, and the ideas behind it are super forward thinking, because, again, this happened late 60s, this was created, and it almost reads like something that you would expect to hear, in the 2000s. So, I mean, the guy was a super smart guy. I feel like I'm repeating myself. I'm a broken record at this point. I just wish there had been more plot. Like I said, I think this would make a really good movie. It would be a super cool, interesting thriller suspense movie, sort of like something like Contagion, or any other of his adaptations that have happened. I know he didn't write Contagion. I'm just using it as an example. But I really just think this would make a better movie than the book, honestly. So it was a light, short read. I read it in a day in the hospital while we were having our son. So I'm happy I read it. I'm definitely looking forward to other Crichton books, because I have a feeling that a lot of them, like Sphere or Jurassic Park, are just going to be better. So I'm definitely looking forward to reading more of Crichton. And I would recommend this. Just in general, I think his works are, kind of speak for themselves. He kind of dominated the 90s with TV adaptations and movie adaptations. He has a ton of good books, so I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what else is out there, because I don't feel like this is probably his strongest, and I want to see more. So until next time, everybody, keep reading.